Hello, welcome Madeline Silvy. Welcome to paganpages.org. And we're going to sit down and have this beautiful conversation with you and your book, Green Witchcraft. I know that you and I just had a few minutes speaking before we jumped on this call, and you have written 3 books in the last year or so.
Yes.
You've been on this wonderful fast track of sharing your knowledge and sharing your wisdom in your life with so many people. But the book that we'll be mostly discussing in this time together will be the Green Witchcraft book. But I want to welcome you and welcome the listeners and everybody who will be joining in on this conversation. Yeah.
Hi. Thanks, Nicole. Thanks for welcoming me. I already feel really comfortable talking to you and ready to share. Of the 3 books I published, definitely Green Witchcraft is my favorite one, and the one that I feel, so connected to, like that's me, Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I was telling you how it just like I love how in the book you start off pretty early on saying like let's just walk barefoot together through this journey.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, that's what I want for this conversation is just whether we're in the garden having tea and barefoot to the earth, but I just want it to be casual and enjoyable because that's exactly how reading your book made me feel. And it just made me feel like sister to sister, woman to woman, we're just sharing our life. There was a lot of validation for me in my life. And also just like for some people, they might not have a living ancestor that they have been close with, that a lot of this knowledge has been passed down through,
Yeah.
or at
Yeah.
least maybe not outspoken with certain language. Maybe it's been more with having cups of tea or something, or working out in the garden, but not so much of the language. And so having another woman that is free to talk about the Green Witch and witch in general and witchcraft and do it in such a grounded, practical way that's relatable, where you, even if you didn't identify with those terms, you can see yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It was really comforting to me. And I guess now that I have you here to actually talk with, I want to thank you for that.
Thank you for saying that. As I was saying when we were chatting a little bit before the interview, like that brings me, it makes me so emotional to hear that, because that's, as I'm writing, I'm really thinking about you and thinking about the reader, like what, how can you feel really connected to me and feel like I actually care, and that somebody out there really cares about you having the best possible experience in connecting to this information, and feel like you're being guided like by a sister, by that person that a lot of us didn't have, to show us this ancient wisdom and connect us back to the earth and the things, the powers that are inside us that we always had and didn't have anybody to teach us about these things. Like one of the things I think a lot about, it's one of my like visions and passions that I have and I want to work on someday, is this idea of a school for healers, where like little kids would, maybe their families identified a special power in them, or they identified it themselves, and they could actually go to school and learn, instead of, hey, how do you identify the main idea and details, who cares about that stuff, but instead identify, what are the vibrational energies around you, and how do you understand what the mind and the consciousness is, to heal, and what herbs hold these powers, and how do I vision this as I'm writing, like how do I would love to create that school for healers someday. And I'm thinking kids, as a channel, like just like what you're saying, so that they would have that person to reconnect us to what I think is true, like the truth of what's going on around us. Like,
Yeah, that's so beautiful. It takes me back to, I'm not sure if I got my bachelor's and my master's in social work, but when I was in college and um, designing certain programs, it was for college projects, so it was more imaginal. But I actually wrote a whole thing about designing a school for kids using their intuitive gifts and really accessing what they are curious about, what they feel they're naturally drawn to, and making it more normal and acceptable, and also then being able to grow and evolve with it. And so it's like full circle hearing you talk about that and saying yes, because the world needs this. We need it. I need it. And I love how you, in your book, you talk about the different archetypes and how we can, see all of ourselves in all of it. So it makes me think of our inner children, and we're still deeply connected to our inner children.
oh yeah, you said one of my favorite words of all times is like imagining and envisioning things. And it's like, I think that's where I live like 95% of the time. It's like, seeing this vision of what things could be. And I was like kind of walking and working towards that. And I love your idea of the school, of the imagination, and, what might it look like? And I can tell you that's sometimes how I fall asleep at night is I imagine myself in my car, like driving down this beautiful wooded sort of gravel road in the forest, and then it opening up, and there's that school. Like there are these little houses, and I think about like, and then I just feel peace. Like in that vision, I feel peace, and I fall asleep, and I'm like, yeah. So I love what you said just now, and I'm ready. If you want to work on it together, let's do it. Like,
Yeah, that's so wonderful. And I love that it's already there. So it already exists, and you're tapping into the existence of it already, whether you call that in the imaginal or the ethereal realm. And as we know, spirit, all these things exist, and then we materialize them and we bring them into form and actualize it. But I can feel how it's already there. And some of us, and I'm sure some of the listeners too, are already tapped into that. And maybe there's some schools that exist. I know there's been Montessori and different Waldorf and different types of nature-based schools that probably have elements of it. But yeah, I just really feel deeply that there's been this cut off from nature and cut off from ourselves, a separation. And with that comes this inability to trust ourselves and
oh,
trust our natural instincts and intuition and where we are being guided with our genius, right? With our gifts.
yes, that is absolutely true. There's a whole process that we go through in the socialization uh, that we go through in this Western world or industrialized world is like, yeah, cut yourself off, invalidate what you know to be true. It's a consistent process of that. And I've gone backwards and thought about that and seen the different ways in which we've invalidated the wisdom and the knowledge and the emotions and everything that we've had and come to where we are today. And then I think like, the second part of your life is a process of finding your way back to that. And then that's when you start to realize, hey, some stuff is missing around here, and you start reaching out to teachers and guides and coaches and healers, like who can point me the way back, like to the things that I actually knew when I came here, but I was told that they weren't true. But now I have a curiosity question about you, Nicole. Like, what is your zodiac chart? Like, what are your 3 big signs, or like?
Yeah, so all earth. So yeah, they call it a triple goddess, earth goddess thing. I can't remember what a different astrologer sent me in my chart, but saying basically that's what I do is I bring the spiritual into physical. Um, but my sun sign is Taurus, my moon is Virgo, and my ascendant is Capricorn.
Wow, you got all 3 earth signs in your main 3. That is amazing. Like,
I know, and I really feel deeply that I have anchored into into them in a beautiful way. But I will tell you a funny story. When I was like 19, 20, I had two different astrologers at two different times tell me, your parents are lying to you. You have been adopted, because that is not at all the energy. Like that birthday and you with your energy, like more of a psychic medium person, like those don't match. But that was just a funny thing and I'm like, nope, I really wasn't adopted. Like this is really my birthday. But
That's interesting. Maybe there's a bunch of other stuff in your chart that's making you more like air sign, because that was the feeling I was getting to with, this imagination and visioning in the future. But
yeah, when you think about like your doshas and stuff in different Chinese medicine, yeah, at this time in my life with perimenopause and stuff, there is more of the ethereal communication and fast thinker and imaginal. So the air element does come into that quite a bit with the Chinese medicine.
oh, that's interesting to know. I didn't know about that. Yeah. And,
Yeah.
I admire that, because that, like, as I'm fire, air, like I only have one earth sign, some tiny Capricorn, some planet is Capricorn. I can't remember what it is. Everything else is like fire and air and water. And so
Mhm.
like I feel that it's hard for me to actually manifest or bring my dreams down into reality. It's like I have them, I live in them consciously, but I don't know how to bring them here.
Well, you're doing it. You're doing it. 3 books in 1 year. I would say you're doing it.
Thank
Eh,
you. Thank you for
yeah,
saying that.
and you've already shared stuff about a fourth book. So, um, yeah, there's so much creativity and sometimes, it does begin there. It does begin in the imaginal and in the spirit realm. And through our dedication and our daily diligence of just physically, right? You build a house by laying one brick at a time. We can get ahead of ourselves and then we can just not do it. But if we just show up and like you've been doing, right, a little bit every day, right? All of a
Yes,
sudden, look at what you can manifest. So it's
that was
beautiful.
very earth sign wisdom of you, and I love it. Like build it brick by brick. That's me. I'm just like, but can't I just go like this and then it's there? Like, no, you can't do that. I love
Yeah.
it.
I mean, we came to Earth for a reason, right? So it feels slow, it feels more dense. Um, and I can relate to that too. And yet there's a purpose in showing up day after day and doing these rituals, and really anchoring in
Yes.
that. So there's so many places I could branch off from, because so much of this is actually spoken in your book. So the first thing, when we were talking about like stigma and stereotypes and taboo and judgments and societal oppression, where we get cut off and separated from our natural birthright. I want to kind of go there because I love how you made everything so practical, relatable, um, which again is all earth. And so you might have more of it than you're aware of
I had two earth sign parents, so maybe they taught me stuff.
rubbed off on you.
Yeah, I was like the balloon in the air without them. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But like, can you speak a little bit to the people who might be struggling? They might be new on this path. So for me personally, I had never researched the term witchcraft or used that terminology. And yet I'm very much a green witch. It's just in me. When, for anybody who knows me and has studied it, they're like, what? Of course, that's totally you. And I'm like, really? Because I never researched it and I never gravitated towards any of those terminologies. And I know it's hilarious in the way spirit works and ironically, I'm writing columns and book reviews and now doing interviews for paganpages.org, so it's funny because we might be the last to be aware of the path we're on and like, oh, it's just the path that we're on. We're not necessarily having to use labels or identify with one specific thing.
Mhm.
Um, but I appreciated being able to have that mirror in the book be so reflected back to me. And like you spoke about even MAGA, Ma and Ga, and you broke it down and then MAGA as one word as well. So you can kind of just share anything that you feel right now, but just talking about the fear and the oppression and separation around, oh, if you identify as a witch or you use the term witchcraft, and all of a sudden people, they go off in some direction with their beliefs and thoughts, and what it actually truly is.
Yeah, that is the question. That is so important. That can go in a lot of different directions with that. And of course, there's the whole history about how witches were persecuted and, how that coincides with the rise of certain very dogmatic religions and patriarchy and all of that. And, women, powerful women embodying their feminine energy, intuition, healing abilities, flowing with the cycles, like all of that just ran contrary to what the rules of the religion were saying, and the ways that patriarchy wanted to take and see people as resources instead of relatives. Like, so a witch historically is someone who sees the spirit world in a horizontal energy sense. And patriarchy and that fear-based knowledge base, I guess you'll call it, I don't know if I call it knowledge, but fear-based way of relating, sees things in a hierarchical and vertical sense. And so you don't see the spirit world as our equal. And at the same time, I'll just, say Christianity, because it's the one that I have, the religion that I have the most experience with culturally. Like, so as we know, like the forms of divinity that many of us learn through these religions were made in the image of human beings, like egoic human beings, like that level of consciousness. And so as you're being socially conditioned in that, many of us, around, have the belief that the divine or the divinity is something vengeful and scary and forceful. And so when you see other people are connected to that, you can feel like, well, they're going to use that power to harm me, because that is my only framework of what the divine is something that might harm me or scare me.
And
So
hold us to that judgment.
Yeah, and judge. Oh yes, it's an important piece of it, that's that whole duality and separation consciousness that we intentionally experience here on Earth. Of course, like, let's sort things into categories of good and bad, and then the good things will be, honored, and the bad things will be, punished or whatever. So, but that judgment process is a mechanism of duality that we experience here.
Even saying the terms good and bad, and realizing how things that we say are bad have been, like you mentioned, the feminine, the menstrual cycles,
Yes.
the darkness. We equate darkness with evil forces, and not like the womb of creation or the mycelium or what's underground or unseen, the rich nutrient soil.
Yes. Right.
And what we're needed to reset, going within, introspection, nighttime, like, instead we equate darkness with evil and wrongdoing and hurting someone else. And yet what's so interesting is, so often, and not, I don't want to say everybody, but there is enough weight in that direction of people who talk about the battle between good and evil, or good and bad, are often using the dark forces in judgment and condemnation,
Mhm.
by saying that certain darkness that's literally just the womb or unseen, or literally the darkness, just close your eyes, right?
Yeah.
And they're saying, oh, that's of the devil, that's witchcraft, that's evil, you worship Satan, and it's always their definition of these terms, without doing a lot of the history work around where these names even came from and derived from, and their origin and all of that. But yeah, it's interesting how that good and bad, we could break that down into so many pieces, like what really is bad.
Yeah.
I remember when I first started to go into the world of intuition and magic consciously as a young adult, um, and shamanism and different things. The first rule, again, I'm, dating me back. This was a long time ago, but the first rule was always do no harm
Mm,
to yourself or to others.
yeah.
And once you anchor in that vibration, and that means with our thoughts, our emotions, our actions, our imaginations, like everything, do no harm.
Yeah.
And then now you can play in the world of magic and mystery and all of that, and know that you can trust yourself with these great powers and intuitive birthrights, um, to hold them sacredly
Mhm.
without that malicious intention. But yeah, I wonder if you want to run off that a little bit.
Yeah. Again, there's a lot to say about that. And I think one thing that I think a lot about is the whole, when I was getting ready for the interview, I was thinking a lot about unity consciousness and separation consciousness, and how, in our human experience, we go in and out of that. There will definitely moments when we remember really, really powerfully that we're all connected and that we are not accidental, and we're just this, filament or this part of the continuous universe, however you feel or see that. And that when you're in that heart space and you're connected to that, you can feel and remember that. And I was thinking about the pathways that I took to remember that and stay more and more in unity consciousness and less in separation, the feeling of fear and ego and separation from nature, separation from all that is. It's suffering, the suffering comes from that separation. But I think, like, a lot of the people that I talk to and I'm connected to, the fundamental belief that they don't have is that the universe is a friendly place. Like, they don't actually believe that, and that everything is happening for our highest and greatest good. And you have to believe that in order to go into unity consciousness. It's like a little portal or a gateway into that. So when you think about, and then what we know or what we're hearing from a lot of spiritual teachers now, which makes a lot of sense. Actually, it's been talked about for thousands of years, that it's a matrix. Like, we're in this play and we're trying out these different costumes and stuff, and learning things, and experiencing things. The purpose of life is to experience life. And from that outside unity perspective, nothing that any of the folks here are doing is good or bad at all. It just is. We're trying out stuff. We're just experimenting with life and seeing what happens. And then you have this beautiful instrument of your heart that can play all these notes, from like the highest joyful, blissful feelings down to the most saddest feelings of despair. And you get to experience all of that as a human being. And from that, that zoomed out unity consciousness perspective, none of them is good and none of them is bad. They just are.
Almost like cause and effect.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I think of the nature-based schools for children and how, they're teaching them how to work with a fire, or letting them somatically through their body. Like, it's not just teaching them verbally, it's through trial and error, through maybe feeling some heat or getting a little burnt, start a fire, or catch a fish and cook it, or what happens if I hit this way, or I do this. And sometimes there is pain that
Mm-hmm.
is involved, and you do speak of that in the book, where you share that very same concept that you just talked about, where life is actually like, this is happening for me, not to me.
This is happening for me. Yep. Always.
Yeah.
Always.
That,
Yep.
and I'm sure you've been there. I know I've been there, where sometimes that's a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I don't want to believe it. Like, what? Yeah. Oh, so true. Yep.
But can't you feel the empowerment and the accountability? Like, what happens when we
Yeah.
feel into that, we connect, and we do live in a friendly universe, and now we take that responsibility of like, what am I going to do with this? Like whether it's a what we call a bad experience or good or a neutral, but like always anchoring in what is here to teach me? What is this here to show me? Who can I be in this moment? Because everything's changing us. We're never the same person because these life experiences change us. It's like alchemy.
Hmm. Hmm. Yep.
And learning to use it for our evolution and our growth. Yeah, consciously, whereas so often we're aware, like really anchoring in that daily as conscious as you can, because then you get to be alive while you're living.
Yeah. You get to be alive while you're living. Yep. And you remember this fundamental truth that like you don't have a life. You are life.
Our life.
You
Oh,
are life itself. And
you are life living you. Life is living you into every moment, into being in every moment.
yeah. Ooh, that's delicious, when you
Yeah.
yeah, that is really true. Like, you know, you're thinking about green witchcraft, and one of the things I think about a lot is one of the spiritual teachers I follow is Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah, me too.
Yes, and this thing I think about a lot because I love birds. I love birds. I just find them to be magical. And he says, once you label something, basically, once you're a little kid and you're like, "What's that, mama?" or whatever, and they're like, "That's a bird," or "That's a robin." Like from that point forward, like you never see a bird again, and that haunts me. And I'm like, that's that mechanism of the mind. Like you created a filter of the mind over which you couldn't actually see the life force energy and the magic that actually is held in all the creatures around us, the trees and things like that. And so I consciously work on not calling it a bird, and just observing that life force energy and feeling why I love birds so much, as this conduit between the physical world and the non-physical world, and how just delicate and beautiful that they are. So I don't know why I started talking about that, but yeah, like
Well,
birds.
it's interesting that today I had a little gap around my lunch break where I was able to go for a walk out back in the woods, and the birds were so active in certain trees, just flying from one tree to the other, but just flocks and flocks. And I don't know what kinds of birds they were, but little birds. And so I stood there just looking up and hearing their music and their sounds and their flight, but I closed my eyes and I could hear it. There, it wasn't like a separation, like you're making the sound, I'm the listener. Everything dissolved and the sound was reverberating me. It was inside my body and outside of me.
Oh,
And yeah, all those lines like just disappeared. And I was just in that sacred moment. And then it happened again, through a different set of trees. And I just was imagining like having time to just lie down on my back, like when you look up at the night sky or something, and just look at these birds and what they were doing and listening to them and just feeling it was, yeah. And that's interesting because I wonder if there was a connection with me getting ready to do this interview with you as well, and your connection with birds.
yeah, it sounds like you really let go of that resistance, that's created through the mind, and you just merged with the nature around you. Um, that is really
Yeah,
a cool experience. I have that. I write outside in my
yeah.
little porch out there a lot, and I like confession. I'm obsessed with the squirrels in my yard. Like I think they have a whole society, and they're doing this thing.
They do. They do.
They're amazing. I mean, I've seen squirrel rumbles. I've seen like one doing this weird thing where it was using its tail as a blanket. Like, I'm like, and they are so like, if I get in that really peaceful state and I'm so connected to myself, and to everything all around, and remembering that I am life, like the squirrels will go right past my feet as if I'm not even there, like completely harmless. Like they feel me. I went out of, whatever separation consciousness, I guess, that I was in, and just merged with what was around. And they're just like, "Oh, you're just another thing out here, completely harmless."
Yeah, that's it, not feeling threatened.
Yeah.
And that separation does do that. That separation consciousness, it makes us feel like we live in an unsafe world, and that we can't trust ourselves or other people or other things. And and again, it goes back to that fear mentality around animals and nature and
Mm.
how we're so sterile. You know, let's keep everything so far removed that we don't even recognize or know the truth, like where food comes from, or
Yeah.
um, where poop goes, or like animals. Like when you think of the landmines, or where our trash goes, like the dumps, like where everything goes, it's like out of sight, out of mind. We don't have to think about it or engage with it, but it creates this, like, that disconnection creates so much. But right now, what I'm feeling with the wild animals and stuff, um, this fear of, like, me versus you, who's going to win, who's going to lose.
Yeah.
And instead of realizing we're all, which, okay, in your book, you mentioned the greetings, all my relatives, and how much that was like an anchor for that book.
Yes.
So maybe you could share that. And
Oh, I
what indigenous nation, or what was that saying from?
Yeah, my friend is Dakota, and that's in Dakota. And when he says it, he greets us that way, and he has taught us many, many things. But when I heard that for the first time, that he's taught us about this idea of when we treat people like relatives, or do we treat people like resources? And I'm translating a lot of the things that he teaches and says into um other, like, yogic tradition, or things that I've learned about, because I haven't had a chance to learn completely from him. And to me, that was all about separation consciousness and unity consciousness. When you remember that we are all relatives, like we're relatives with the squirrel nation, we're relatives with the deer nation, relatives with the trees, the rocks, all the people around us. When you really, like, and then there are layers to remembering. Like, that's my feeling, is there are layers to remembering, and then sometimes you forget. But when we treat people, when we remember that we can't do harm to others because we don't want to. There's no motivation for it whatsoever. You remember that, oh, this is, everybody here is me, and we're like all in this together. We're all in this life experience together. So
Yeah.
that, yeah, and that is powerful. And that is the foundation of that, like with Mama Earth, like that powerful feminine energy that is her. We are connected to her. We are her daughters and sons. And, you um, when that, again, that makes me really emotional to even say that or remember that out loud, because we were taught the opposite of that.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
power of the Green Witch is to heal ourselves, like to remember that for ourselves, that we're relatives with Mama Earth, and that we're fractals of what she is teaching us. And all we have to do is quiet the mind and be quiet and listen and be humble and willing to learn from her, and remember, like, everyone around us is struggling with different things, but they are underneath that, like, our relative, and they maybe be confused, and have all those filters of the mind, but still they have their dreams and their spark of divinity, just like we do.
Yeah, it just opens the heart space to so much more compassion
Yeah.
instead of that mental compartmentalizing, this or this, separation. The mind likes to have everything in nice compartments, and some of it's functional. In order for us to have this experience, there has to be separation, and that's okay. We can utilize it for what it's there for, and come into our heart space and know that we truly are one. And that,
Yeah.
like you said, life is animating all of this. We're the receivers of this.
Yeah. And the separation consciousness is not bad. It's like, sometimes I think of it like, I don't know if you were a Star Wars fan, or if you ever watched Star Wars.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, do you remember when they had that little training, the little training droid or
Right.
whatever, and it would zap you, and they had, I really like Star Wars. And
Yeah.
anyway, so, like, so they're fighting with this, and I'm thinking, like, separation consciousness in some ways is like it's like our little uh tester thing. Like, we get to try it out and fight against it, and go
Mm.
back and forth between unity and separation consciousness. It's just like, it's an experience that we're having specifically here on Earth.
Yeah. It's like our Jedi warrior training.
Yeah, like our Jedi warrior training. Like how do you stay in your heart space with all this business going on around you, like this pull to be sucked into the ego, this pull to be sucked into the mind, like,
Yeah. Without doing so without scapegoating or bypassing too.
yeah,
So, like being able to tell such the truth that it includes and doesn't separate. So you can be deeply hurt, or you can be offended or not liking something or whatever, and so learning instead of the or to put the and in is so crucial, so that we can hold the space for all of it. Otherwise, it becomes bypassing and avoiding and ignoring, and then it's going to come up usually in other hidden ways through our shadow, or different ways where it's like, hey, I thought we're all one. Hey, I thought we are. It's like, yeah, we are,
and
and this hurts.
yeah, that's authenticity. There was this, I don't know if I just watched this really cool TikTok about this, the Spain SPANE experiment. Did you hear about that? This creator was saying how they put 25,000 people were in this experiment. They put them in one space together, and they were measuring the emotional frequency, or the frequency of the different emotions that they were emitting, and were able to quantify the difference between things such as anger and despair. And they found out, this was so interesting, like they found out in this experiment that what they thought, or what everyone thinks is the most powerful emission, was actually not. And what a lot of us, and I too, I was like, it's love, right? Like, no, it wasn't love, it was authenticity. And that's what you were just talking
I'm
about there.
so about that.
Yeah, like, you know what?
Because what we know as love, I think we still have a lot to learn about these terms that we just throw around, like witch and witchcraft, and like we use all these words, but do we really know what we're saying? Because I think a lot of people that hold the judgment, they don't know. They've been programmed. I mean, we've all been programmed, but we have these views that were told to us about something,
Yeah.
instead of really embodying and going through that experience.
And don't you think too, I think part of that like whole thing about the evilness of a witch is a shaming of like, don't, it's like a shaming of your own divinity. Like you can't be pretending you're like a god. Like that thing, instead of, again, knowing that we're all connected, and God is like speaking right through us. We're just all this one heartbeat of the universe, working together. But if you
it goes back to that anchoring into, it's all here now, it's all one. And so often we've placed God or the goddesses or deities in many religions, right? We've placed them out there.
Yep, separate from us.
Yeah, and so only we can pray, even in Buddhism and in Hinduism and Christianity. There's so many where it's like we're through karma or evolution, like we're hoping someday we'll be good enough.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait a minute, your life, your existence of having life right now is already proof enough that you are.
Yep. You are a master. That's what Bashar says too. Like somebody asked him one day, how do the entities in non-physical form see us as humans, like, and he says, I think that you probably assume that we think you're a bunch of kindergartners, and actually that is not true. For anyone who takes the pathway to have a physical life on earth with all of its limitations and challenges, we see you all as masters, every single one of you, every single human that chose.
It's the opposite of the sinner mentality, and instead it goes to,
yes,
it's the literal opposite of that.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like
yeah.
you don't have to prove anything because you're already here, which is proof enough
Yeah.
that you're the Jedi warrior.
Exactly.
You might have to go through some remembering.
Like you picked the challenge level, baby. Like you're ready for this,
Oh yeah. Oh, I love that we're having this fluid conversation because, having read your book, I can see where all the nuggets are woven within the book.
Yay.
But to people who are curious. Like, I'm hoping that these conversations make them want to go out and get the book, because it's so wonderful. And I didn't know anything about you before I read the book, but so much of the transmission was coming through where you really were speaking from more of that non-dual place, where sure, we can use names and we can call things certain things, but there's still an essence of something underneath all of that. And
Yeah,
so I love that you follow Eckhart Tolle and you talk about how you're consciously unraveling the
yeah,
labels to really be present and see things as they truly are, moment to moment, live in the magic of everyday life.
yeah.
And yeah, I think of different books I've read over the years, and shamanic initiations and stuff around the animal speaks, and learning to listen through our animal instincts
Mm,
and sensory, our senses, so that we really can be more fluid and not so identified as this, and then we completely bypass what's actually here and the magic of it.
and listen to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was like, I was thinking about something. I was gonna say two things. Oh, well, one, yeah, the sensing the vibrations of things, that there are medicines everywhere on earth. Oh, I know. I was gonna mention, like, I'm going through like perimenopause now as well. Like that started, I think, for me about 2 years ago. So it's a process. And my friend and I were having this conversation, and we realized through our conversation, my symptoms got worse when I was kind of isolated and I wasn't around younger women. And my symptoms were better when I was around, this a bigger group where there were younger women and there were women of all ages in there. And through our conversation, we realized like that vibration, your hormones have a vibrational reality. And so people who lived in a more collective probably didn't have as severe of menopausal symptoms because we were able to be around um women of all generations, and to like, I don't know, like to be influenced by the vibration of their estrogen that they still have in their body and whatever was going on. And I'm like, that is, yeah, that is profound. That is profound, and again, like going to the like interconnectedness of all things.
Yeah,
So
it makes me think of Bruce Lipton and the epigenetics that has been talked about now through bridging science and spirituality, and how we used to believe in the material universe, and believe that our genes was everything, but now through epigenetics, we in all the studies we've realized, no, your genes are like a box of Legos, and everybody has the same box of Legos, all the same pieces. And then you get put in separate rooms, and you're just told to, like, let's say, build a house. You all have the same parts, but you have to build a house. And then you put everyone together and you realize, wow, everyone's house isn't the same. We all had the same parts, but look what you did with it, and look what you did with it. And it shows how epigenetics is our environment, our relationships, our beliefs, our programming, and how everything is influencing what genes get turned on, which ones go dormant, which ones get access, what doesn't, and how they materialize.
yeah, yeah, very, very true. That whole area is absolutely fascinating to me. I definitely think of epigenetics at least 3 times a day. Like,
Yeah.
some
And I
reason.
love how you connected that with the hormones, because there's so much hormone replacement therapy and different things. Whether we go through the allopathic side or the or herbalism or homeopathy or holistic or shamanism or whatever, but I love how you just say, if we can plug back in and be in community and reciprocity and that interconnectedness, the hormones, because energy is fluid, right? Energy travels through body, different body, through all forms. And so we all get to bask and balance
Yep.
each other's. We know in women's menstrual cycles, you put women together, a lot of times their cycles start to synchronize.
Yeah. So something's happening there. And so why not? Like, why can't that be a therapy? Let's be in a multi-age, multi-generational collective and a community here and all be together. And so,
Yeah.
because we obviously have things in our reality, in our vibrational field that could be really helpful for younger women as they're growing, like this strength we have, this unwaverability in knowing who we are. Like, we don't give up anymore.
Yeah, those boundaries.
Yeah.
Not going into the fawn, the fight, flight, and freeze, but the fawn, which is that people pleaser, that girly archetype that we all like. Let's just laugh at a really bad joke that's actually insulting, but ha ha ha.
Yeah. Yeah. I know you
Yeah,
like the thing, I think something that you said too made me think about the elements and how, like, okay, so one thing I wanted to share with folks, and I don't think I really talked much about this in the book, but that you have access to those elements inside you. Like, those elements are all a part of you. And so you can tune into them and use them for your own healing. Like, for example, one thing that I do is if the weather is cold and damp, and I get some sinus congestion, like, I actually activate my own fire element and like heat up that area, and it works every time. And I clear the congestion that's out of there. And sometimes, and I'll like lean into my own intuition and then, like, do I need some air to kind of blow things out or what it is? So you can think about all of that. Like, how are you feeling? Ask your intuition, like, okay, do I need some earth in this? Do I need to fire to get the stagnation moving, or whatever, water to clear the emotions? Activate it within yourself, or for other people. If you're a healer and you're healing others, you're a green witch and you're a healer, which I think those things are deeply actually tied to one another as well. You have your friend, your family member, your kid, whatever is having, again, ear infection, sinus infection, into it, like, what element is needed, what's out of balance, in the person's body, and they administer it to them, to your own
yeah.
being.
It goes back to that empowerment and taking responsibility, accountability to actually access what is available to us all, and not be the victim, not be powerless, not think it's outside of you, but to call it in.
And you can try that first before you try allopathics, whatever. And I'm
Yeah,
not, but sometimes you need them. Many people need them. Those are also gifts from the creators in many ways. And sometimes those things that need to be rebalanced, you can do it yourself. If you don't have access to that, or don't feel comfortable with it, or you just want to use your own power and remember that you can do
yeah.
it.
Use it. You can use it. It doesn't have to be this or that. It can be used in community and in combination with other things. And that's what your book really spoke about. You really gave you did actually talk about the elements. And I love that quote with Pima Chodron, where you speak about we are all made up of the elements, and in death we all shed and return back to the oneness.
Yes, right. Yep, I love that one too.
Yeah,
Um,
but you talk about crystals and herbs and I mean, using wood, different wood. You even have a wonderful story with um, the man that you met on your walk with, who was hooking up the sound meter with the fungi. Yeah.
the mushroom songs. Oh my gosh, that was amazing. Yep. Yeah,
Mhm.
everything is vibration, and it's electromagnetic field around it, and things impact and influence us healing wise, or taking us into a different direction of consciousness. These things are alive, like, they are alive. And oh my gosh, I have my little pile of crystals that I have like right here next to me all the time. Like, I'll show you a few of them. I just got this one. It's like a rhodocyanite, I think it is.
Oh,
Um,
is it?
yeah, it's really cool. It has this cool black spot on it. I
Oh,
love.
okay. I wonder if it's there's rhodochrosite and rhodonite, but yeah,
Yeah.
I wonderful.
And so yeah, I keep these by me all the time, and they're like, this one really great for
Mm.
throat chakra, those things. But yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
I have crystals all around me. I've been holding a amethyst point during our conversation. And yeah, lots of different ones that have been sitting here holding the space. But I it's interesting with me because I've never really been one to label things um and retain so much of the names. I'm getting, I want to say, a little bit better now and understanding that sometimes you need that language also. Um, instead of, because I can go into energy and essence of all things. So I created a mushroom oracle deck. So hearing that story in yours was amazing, because a lot of people think of, mushroom medicine, which is the name Mushroom Medicine Oracle, as something you take internally. But how I work with things is energetically. And so with my work as an intuitive therapist, I'd call my sessions soul sessions. And so, and even my column on paganpages.org is teaching people how to commune through their essence to essence. Because that's what I've been born with, that's what I naturally do. But then learning how to take what I take for granted and just comes natural and easy for me, and learn to break it down in ways to then guide and share and talk to other people. It's been very interesting. It kind of sounds like what you have been doing, writing your books too, and like learning how to like actually have these conversations with people instead of just knowing it inside yourself or living it. But yeah, just knowing that everything is right here. We're made up of all of it. Even the fungi and the bacteria and the viruses, like everything is a part of us. Everything creates life and death, right? Because we need things to recycle, because that which is composting creates new rich soil for the rebirth and the new birth. But everything is reciprocal and feeding it into itself to create life. We're all a part of it. And I love how you break it down so that we can like be conscious of it, identify maybe what's missing or what's lacking or what's needed, and then say, okay, how am I going to access this? And then with so much fun, because a lot of these modalities are fun. They're beautiful, they're fun, they draw people in, they're whimsical, but in essence, what are they really, what's all that fun, and what is it really doing? It's helping us probably at the end of the day to bring us back to that. There's no separation. You have all the powers that are within me.
Yeah. It's yeah. What is it? Which I don't remember. Is it Hinduism or yogic tradition where there's this term playing the divine game of Leela? Have you heard that before? It's the playing in duality. And I think when we are in our most authentic like spirit form, we're doing those things that you're talking about right there. We have each our own blueprint for the passions and the joys and the playfulnesses. I love how you lit up when you were talking about mushrooms and like their beingness. I could feel your passion and joy for that. And talking about what do all of these things do, and playing so joyfully with the physical world around us, and how we're connected through the astral field and all of that. Like that's playing in duality, like the divine game of Leela, they call it. And I'm like, oh man, that's incredibly delicious. Like
It takes that weird how we've the disconnection, but it's the seriousness too, right? So in that, taking everything so seriously that now we're disengaged from life, we're not having fun,
oh yeah,
we're overthinking everything, we're judging certain things, we're separate, we're cut off. And how you just brought that full circle is loosen up, have fun, it's all here. We've
you
been
got
given everything.
yep, you got to come here where they're to a place where there was like mushrooms and birds and like cats and circuses and like police officers and ATMs. Like you got to come here and see all this stuff and do things with it, like in your most authentic form. That is amazing. You're like, I wonder what will happen today.
Yes. And being able to see that shadow or where it comes from that says it's still not enough. And,
Yeah.
like still trying to piece apart, like I'm still going to look for what I don't have.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it was like there's elephants and refrigerators and like, you know, Irish festivals. I mean, like there's so much cool stuff around if you really think about it. And yeah.
Yeah. And where does that really come from when we're still in that temper tantrum of like the lack mentality, the victim consciousness or whatever? and not really understanding that we can pivot, like if we're in a situation that we find ourselves in and we're like, okay, like some of it can be pivoting mentally with our perception, like how are we viewing the situation? Some of it can be pivoting by regulating our nervous system, getting back into our body, making different choices, um, having something end, creating something new. But like really having fun, I feel like having fun is such a key. And it's very clear that you have fun. It's very clear that you have fun. I shared already in the beginning how it felt like I was just with a friend, which is basically what this conversation has felt like too. But,
Well,
just like you can tell that probably if it's anything like me, because my inner child is very present and I have a lot of fun, and people always can see my inner child light up. And it's like, yeah, but I think it's come out more in my life because I have had the opposite. I've had a lot of density, seriousness, taken things too serious and been too rigid. And then having my spirit just crumble everything and say, okay, are you ready now? Like you've had that. Are you ready to go and do this journey now? And I'm like, yeah, okay. But I
yep.
can feel that in you as well, where you're just like, you know what? At the end of the day, this is like, I'm around all this. Everything is magical. Like, what am I going to do with it? If you can
Yes.
create anything,
Yep. Yep. Every day should, to some degree, feel like that or start off like that. And yeah, there are challenges, And for the most part, yeah, I am ridiculous and silly and laughing, jolly all the time. But, definitely have my moments where it's like, oh, for heaven's sakes, yeah. And then remember, we're playing the game. We're playing the game. Like,
yeah. Mm. Yeah, I love that. You had me think of a couple last things. I mean, I could talk to you forever, but I thought of like your story about. I don't think it was the orange cat that you have now,
mm,
um, Silvestro. I think it was another orange cat, Prince, that you
yeah,
also spoke about in the book, and how there was an experience with Prince where you activated your healing hands and the power of healing. I don't know
yeah.
if you could share that.
Yeah, well, that was pretty significant. Like, um, I loved that little guy so much, and I think I was coming home from school, and I saw Prince like run across the road. At the same time this car was speeding by, and I think what happened was he kind of like hit one of the tires of that car, and then he was in the car. I don't think noticed at all what had happened and kept going, and he was lying out there in the road, and my heart was like stopped and breaking and broken, like that desperation feeling that you feel. I don't remember how old I was, little, remember. But anyways, I went out and my dad was trying to stop me, like, and I was like, no, 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 this can't be the case. And I felt him like saying, this is your time to learn about the life force energy. And I am not dead. And I put my hands on him, and I could feel, like I could sense this, faint light, the life force, like the heartbeat that was underneath there. And I picked him up, and he was very like limp and fuzzy, furry. And I felt like, and I carried him back to the home, to our house, and sat there in the garden, like just holding him. And I could feel like this tingling feeling on the palms of my hand. And I knew, and I could feel it, like, how does it feel? Almost like a water jug being filled up or something. Like, could feel him. And then I took care of him. I kept him by me all the time, for many, many days. And, giving him little bits of water and like soft food, and he came back to life, and he lived to be the age of a cat, like 18, whatever he was, when he finally passed of old age. But yeah, and I think it was one of those examples of where, like, I think it was supposed to happen that way. And I've read so many things and heard so many things about cats later on, about how they have one foot in the spirit world and one foot in the physical world at all the time, you know, so they can see spirits and things like that. And so if your cat is like staring at some random thing, they're definitely seeing a spirit of some kind there, and that they are healers to us, that they'll come and channel negative energy away. And so I think cats are such miracles. But you know, I definitely think Prince was part of my journey to show that power. Like I still have that healing energy in my hands, you know, like, and can touch and see people's thoughts and things like that by touching their bodies. And you know, like I can do Reiki as well. And I did a session for one of my friends the other day, and I touched his head and immediately I saw corn. I was like, what are you thinking about corn, brother? And he's like, oh my God, I can't believe you saw that. Like my mom was making me eat this sweet corn and it's in the fridge and I don't like it. And I was like, so it's not always super useful what I can see, but anyways.
No, but it's validation that you're tapped in.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah,
Yeah,
that,
spirit has a sense of humor for sure. Um, how much of that experience and also going throughout your life now and being where you are today, like how much would you ascribe that that healing was coming through maybe two things? I mean, what I could feel in your story was your love, how much you love, but also your disbelief and choosing to believe something different with all of your might, with every ounce of your will. Like, I will not believe that. This is what I believe, and this is where I'm going to channel my love.
oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, you know, definitely probably the second one. It's like, no, I, something inside me says that this is the truth and I'm going to believe this. And that has been me like my whole life, you know, like just because you say it is that way, my heart and soul is telling me it is different. And I'm going to show you how it is.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I talk about that with my family. I have 4 adult children now, and the youngest being 18, but just how it's been a constant theme um, with them throughout their whole life, where it's like so often people can say, well, what do you mean that's normal? Or everybody's family does that. Or, you know, like, let's say, oh, siblings just fight, or brothers pick on sisters, or what do you mean? Like everybody's doing this, or and just writing things off as normal, but that feel like, okay, maybe they're common, like maybe even a stream of consciousness is common to believe or think in our world, but does that mean it actually is what I choose? Does that actually feel the most honest, authentic, loving within me? And
Yeah.
knowing like we don't have to follow suit and conform and do what everybody else is doing, but we can choose a different way.
Yes, I love that. I love what you're saying. Yeah.
And how your book talks about, you know, it takes me back full circle to, you know, the green witchcraft and the green witch and the witch in general, and just being able to realize, you know, you shared how there's a reason why some of these women were maybe outcast, but some of them even choose to go off in the woods or live remotely or live alone, away from that epigenetics that we talked about, away from that constant influence, to be able to tap into my own intuition, my own relationship with life and nature and all the other everything, to then decipher, okay, now what am I choosing?
Yeah, exactly. Like that's absolutely it. That's profound what you're saying right there, because you know, we are so influenced by the energies all around us. And if you are hearing these types of messages or energetically or out loud, oh, there's a lot of power in words too. Um, but yeah, like if you get to a place where you're like, I just need to hear myself. I need to hear myself. And for many of us, like that involves going into the forest and being away from people and the things that they're listening to and the needs that they have. And yep. And so as I get older too, I long and crave more for that, because I mean, even as I was driving to my house this morning after doing something, and I have been very busy in the last couple weeks, and finally I was able to hear myself. And there, many of us are saying and noticing, I don't know if you're probably noticing this too, there's a real heaviness all around us. And so it's sort of like the collective is doing a deep dive, and a lot of shadow work is coming up, and there's this dense energy really being transmuted and processed. And I can feel it all around me, this heaviness, like all around all the time. And to the point where like, I'm like, I can't hear myself right now. And so I said, after the interview today, that I'm going to go someplace, and be as close to as much nature as I can, so I can hear, what that is all about. I think light workers, empaths, healers right now are especially feeling that heaviness all around and on them. And we need to hold on and keep going, because it will be cleared at one point, and we're a part of that too. So we have to somehow figure out a way, to stay as high vibed as we, and authentic maybe is a better way of saying it, like as authentic as we can, and take care of ourselves so we can hear the truth of that and not get sucked in to the density and start running old patterns in our mind.
That's an important thing to talk about, where we've talked a lot about the interconnection and the oneness, and how that again can kind of bypass and overlook. Well, another side of the interconnectedness and the oneness is, let's say someone you love or know, or the world at large, like with the wars and stuff, but there's pain and suffering. Some people who are very sensitive can get sucked into that, and they can forget that it's not happening to them personally, and that they can be grateful, they can access joy, they can be in a different vibration, but it can make people feel guilty. Like, how can I be happy and have joy when there's so much suffering? And so we just get sucked into the suffering as if that's the oneness.
Yeah.
But the key is understanding that, like we talked about with reciprocity, and how even in birth and death, the cycles support each other. So does the pain and suffering with the joy and gratitude and peace. So if it's authentic, if in this moment you can do something that brings you joy and comfort, and be tapped into those feelings and those vibrations, you're bringing that to the whole.
Yes.
So often we actually can be the medicine that the world is needing, or anyone is needing, but we have to override that, whatever that programming of what oneness is, that says, oh, like how many people who are grieving a loved one, they just say, I can't, like, how could I ever be happy and experience joy ever again with the death of this person? And yet, and then I've seen as a therapist over the years, where even after time goes by, they feel guilty. Like, oh my gosh, I actually enjoyed myself for a minute, and I wasn't thinking about my deceased loved one. And then this guilt comes in. But more and more as you work with that, you experience the healing salve, the balm, the medicine is all woven in to even the pain, and that they're supporting the whole. It's all here.
Yeah.
And so that interconnection is not just, oh, there's so much pain and suffering in the world. Yes. And there's a lot of moments of complete peace and joy and love and intimacy and connection.
Yep. Yeah. And it goes back to something you were saying earlier in the conversation about, judgment and sorting ourselves into categories of good and bad. And one thing that we really do to ourselves is say, these are the things and qualities that make me a good person. And there's a lot of those programs, that are running in our subconscious mind that we are not even aware of what we think a good person does. And so I think that's where like guilt and shame, but guilt in this particular example comes up. Like, if I feel sad and joyful when something awful has happened to myself or other people, then I must be a bad person. And then, the ego and the judgment and the mind comes in. And yeah, it's super interesting.
It is. It goes back to the witch, the archetype, and the connection to Gaia. and the MAGA that you speak about in the book, but just understanding that there's been, with that separation mentality, there's been so much around giving our power away. Even the term being empathic has now, it's now been socially acceptable to not be in your business, to be in everyone else's business. and and just like what this calling of the witch archetype is, bringing it back, anchoring you back to the earth, connecting you to the present moment and to the cosmos and to all that is taking your ownership and your power back into your hands, and saying, like, what do I want to say? I can just feel how you are giving, it's not even permission. We don't need permission. It's not validation. It's like a lighthouse. I mean, I don't know if you said that in the book, but it's like you're saying, this is real, this exists, and you can connect here with it. You can choose, because so often in relationships with the codependency and stuff, we have given our power away and we have said, oh, I always need to be helping others. I always need to be feeling what they're feeling. I always have to do what they need. I always have to check in what is needed out here, outside of me, instead of accessing what is the divinity, what is inside me, what am I connected to, what is my place of power, and then acting from that place. But it will bring up selfishness, all that judgment you talked about. It will bring up unworthiness, feelings of like, who am I, again, to be happy or to be joyful in the midst of all this, because that's that programming, whether it's religious programming, societal programming, even just the feminine programming of about what women's roles are. But to actually live sovereignly and connected through your own vessel in your own life, and then through that connection you ripple out and you feel the wholeness and oneness. But you can't bypass that sovereignty first.
Yep.
But so often we cut ourselves off of our own divinity, our own sovereignty, our own connection, and then we try to become healers and helpers and everything out there.
Yep. Because it makes us feel like good people. And,
yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Or do you love me enough now? Am I good enough now? Am I lovable now? Am I going to go to heaven? Am I, have I been selfless enough? I just know, for me personally, when I take my last breath, there's this feeling of like, have I lived fully?
Mm-hmm.
Which means to honor the self and have the self be a portal in which I get to experience this richness of all of life.
Mm-hmm.
So in some way you could say self-full.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow. So
it's profound.
there's so much. I love your book. I didn't even know you wrote 3 books until we got on this call. So now I can't wait to read some of your other books, and also be looking out for the 4th book that you're creating and birthing through right now. I thought we could end on something a little fun, but I don't want to put you on the spot. And so we can take this a few different ways. But because you have such a deep connection, like I can feel the integrity within you. It's different when people are just writing a book or talking about something and it's not rooted. And being rooted is a theme also in your book, and how important that is. But I can feel from you that you have vast wisdom and knowledge through your own personal experience, and now you're just coming into that space of sharing and letting it overflow, but that integrity is there. And so I thought maybe just a 3-minute, 5-minute guided kind of journey, if you wouldn't mind just taking me and you and the audience on a space of like connecting with green witchcraft and accessing our own sovereignty, if you would feel comfortable doing that.
Sure, I'll give it a try.
Yeah.
Okay, so close your eyes and find yourself a comfortable position. If you can, be sitting outside on the earth, and sit in a crisscross position if you can. If not, just sit comfortably in your chair. And then take a couple of deep, soothing breaths. And just feel the life force energy inside your body. Just feel the life inside of you. And then take one nice, refreshing, deep breath. And as you're breathing out, send that breath down into your legs and down through the bottoms of your feet. And imagine that these beautiful, healthy, sparkly, wonderful roots are growing down, down, deep into the earth, past the crust of the earth, past the mantle, and all the way down into the very core of the earth. And these roots are very healthy and strong. And now with your next breath, breathe and pull that breath up through those roots, all the way through your body, past your heart and up through your head. And as you are inhaling again, imagine that breath creating the beautiful branches of a tree that grow out of the top of your head and expands up and up and up. And these beautiful, sparkly, wonderful leaves are blowing in the wind, and they are also expanding up into the space and in the heavens. And on your next breath, breathe through those leaves and back down, and send that breath down into the roots, down into the earth. And on your next breath, breathe through those roots and pull that breath up and up and up and into your heart space this time. Just feel that breath in the space behind your heart. And now imagine that in that space behind your heart, the earth is there. Mama Earth, the earth is there. You're holding it inside your heart. And as you breathe in, she grows. She grows more. She grows as big as your body. And she grows as big as the room. And she grows out into space. And you're inside her now. And ask, Mother Earth, do you have any message for me? You may hear it now, or you may hear it later during a quiet moment. Now allow the earth to shrink back down and come back down into the space behind your heart. And she's going to stay there now. And take a few more deep breaths. And when you're ready, to open your eyes. And look around and find yourself back in the room. And put your hands in the palms to palm on your heart. Just stay thank you and a little gratitude for the experience and whatever's coming up for you today. Let's just feel peaceful and in your heart space for just a moment. And thank you, Mama.
Thank you so much, Madeline. That was beautiful. I'm so glad that I had the courage to ask you and you had the courage to say yes, because that was really lovely.
Thank you. I appreciate that a lot, Nicole. I really enjoyed talking to you today.
Yeah, it felt very serendipitous. And I knew just even reading your book, knowing I was doing the written book review for Pagan Pages org, not even knowing I was going to do the interview. And then being asked if I would do the interview too, and then just continuing. But it's just very serendipitous. It's been lovely to meet you and feel into how authentic and full of integrity you are, like the real deal. So often we can meet people that are more for show and whatever that is, and they don't have those roots. They're not grounded in it. But even though you don't have the earth, I can feel that you are deeply plugged in.
So happy.
Yeah. And maybe that's why you didn't need so much earth in this life, because you already are so plugged in. You know,
Yeah.
sometimes we're given what we're needing
Oh.
and not always what comes natural or easy for us. So, it's very easy for me. I've always been connected to spirit since childhood. It's very easy for me to, at first it was disassociate, but then it just became live in the spirit world. And I can meditate. I can fast. I can do a lot of things that leave my body and go into the spirit. But in this lifetime, spirit's like, nope, you're going to come into the body and you're going to come into this life. And so maybe I needed the triple earth to tether me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Maybe you didn't need it because you're already so grounded.
Maybe that's the case. Yeah. I love that. That's beautiful. I'm going to carry that with me. Like, I am already grounded. Like, I can live in
Yeah,
the.
I feel it from you. That says a lot. So where can people find you? Do you have a website, or do you have any way for people to find you and your resources, your books?
Well, right now I just have them on Amazon. I have started a little Facebook page called Witchcraft for Beginners, and I post on there from time to time. So that's something that I can share with you, the link to that. I share resources and things on there. And that's really it for right now, I think.
Yeah, wonderful. So we'll make sure that we plug in a link to the Witchcraft for Beginners for Facebook, as well as the names of your books for people to look up in Google and find on Amazon or wherever else. Um, yeah, it's been such an honor. Is there any final words of wisdom you want to share before we say goodbye?
Just thank you. I feel real deep gratitude for getting to talk to you today. I love the background with the mushrooms, and it's just really, really cool. I like mushrooms too, and now I'm even more curious about them after you talked about your passion for them. But that's it. And yeah, I'm writing that fourth book right now, and once I get that all in line, I'll be sending that out as well. And hopefully it helps people to connect to the things that they want to connect to as well. So.
Yeah, definitely. It definitely does. And, for anyone needing that woman to woman sisterhood companionship, where it really does feel like you're sitting outside and having a cup of tea with a beloved friend and sharing and things, that's exactly that comfort and level of real communication and honesty, and also playfulness and fun and joy in all the different ways we can work with
Yes.
nature and everything. Yeah, it was so jam-packed and so full of dabbling in so many ways, but just keeping it anchored and in the mystical and the magic, but also like don't get lost there. Like, and I love how you share, form your own connection with the land, form your own connection, like be in the silence, tune out the rest of the world long enough to build your own relationship with these things, and start off like you give little suggestions about, well, where can people start? And you don't have to make it so big and overwhelm yourself that you become stagnant, right? And not do anything. So you make it very applicable and simple in a way that people can be like, okay, thank
Really.
you. Thank you, dear friend.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. Oh, well, it was an honor, Madeline. And yeah, until we see each other again, I'm sure we'll stay connected now. And I look forward to whatever that brings.
Love that too. Thank you so much, Nicole.
Yeah, my pleasure. And to everybody who's watching, um, thank you for joining Pagan Pages org. And you can follow us on our website. You can look to find us on Facebook and on Instagram. And yeah, until next time.
Until next time.